You should be closing in on getting your 3 graphs plotted. You'll find patterns maybe similar or in the general direction of what you see on the board. Wherever your dots happen to be, connect the dots. I think we're going to go ahead and move forward through this, if I could have your attention. Well, what I would like you to do first is look at graph number 3. And I would like you to identify on graph 3 any letters that you have that are above the halfway line from the highest to the lowest. The graph here that I'm pointing to, the I and the S are above, and the I is highest. So we would call this an I-S personality. Over here we had one where the C and the D are both high, above the halfway line, but the C's a little higher, so, or maybe it is. It might be a DC then. A CD, sorry. The highest letter first. CD. Okay so far? So if I ask you what personality style did you type as, you can tell me. It might be 1 letter, might be only 1 letter above the midway line, might be 2, might be 3. Rarely it is 4. All right so far? Okay. What does it mean? I am trying to finish up the voiceover on a PowerPoint that when I get it completed, I'll link you to it and it'll take you through some of this. The little booklet on Canvas will also explain this to you. But we're going to go through it in class so we have a little interaction for anybody who's got any comments or questions. What does the disc tell us? First off, there's only 4 styles, a D, an I, an S, and a C. And you're probably some mix of them. In fact, all of us are a mix of all of them to some or more or less degree. But we tend to look at them first this way. Imagine a spectrum that runs between an orientation towards getting your tasks done. You're focused on what have I got to do. And at the other end of the spectrum, you're focused on the relationships in your work environment, the people you work with. You're going to be somewhere along this spectrum. You're going to be either more task-focused or more people, relationship-focused. And so I might ask you, when you're driving to work in the morning and you're thinking about work, what are you thinking about? Are you thinking about the things you got to do? Or are you thinking about the people you're going to see and the conversations you're going to have? As you go through the day, do you spend most of your day focused on what you've got to do? Or do you spend, if not most of your day, at least most of your enjoyment comes from the people you talk with, the conversations you have? You're going to be along here somewhere, and some of you are going to say, well, I'm right in the middle, and that's not allowed. Okay? Just to keep it simple. The other spectrum is people who are focused on what we call the process. How should I go about doing things? How should I go about talking to people? Versus the end result or the product. If you're towards the product end, you're focused on getting it done. You're generally mentally working in terms of short timelines, short conversations, get the job done so I can get on to the next one. If you're down here on the process side, if I gave you the directions to an iPhone and a new iPhone and you didn't know how to operate it, what you would probably do is you would open up the book and you would go through it page at a time, making sure you understood how the iPhone worked. Now how would this person learn how to use an iPhone? Start pushing the damn button. It's easy, you know? These identify fundamentally the basic styles. The D personality tends to be task-oriented and focused on let's get it done now. Think of the D as a driver. When you need something done, give it to a D. It'll get done. Their conversations are fairly short, to the point, and they're very direct and short in the way they talk to you and I, because they're focused on the facts. Big key. They value themselves and others on what you have done and can do. You got to walk the walk, talk the talk, don't do it. They, without meaning to be rude or curt or abrupt, they tend to speak very factually and very quick. This is a person who walk into work one day and say, those clothes don't match, and walk right by it. Didn't mean anything offensive, just commenting on the facts, you know. I got so many stories, I try not to drive them. Down here, focused on fairly short time frames, getting things done, but in terms of people, this is the I personality. Think of this as someone who is inspirational. They like to talk, they like to be the focus of attention, they like to entertain, and typically people love being around them because they're fun to be with. They have a great sense of humor, they're very, very dominant characteristic, optimistic. If you're not an I personality, you probably need one in your life for when things slide down.
Available, guys.
You're available. You can tell an I will walk into a party and kind of drift over into one of the corners. That way, everybody's got, that he's talking to's got to look at him, and they're not getting distracted looking at other people. They like an I personality picks up the newspaper in the morning and reads through it reasonably quickly, unless there's an article about them in there. So they go through the paper pretty quick, okay? Fairly strong ego. Now, what we're talking about, I'm describing people who are kind of at an extreme, okay? Because it's more fun to laugh at them. Most of us are not at the extremes, we're down in here somewhere. I personality. S personality. S personality, sometimes in another model, is called the amiable personality. This is a kind of a go along, get along personality. Very concerned with relationships and keeping things on an even keel. Very sensitive to when things get out of balance, personality conflicts develop, arguments are taking place. Really looking to be kind of the peacemaker, if you will. Okay. And then up here, the C personality. The C personality is focused on what they've got to get done, and particularly on getting it done the right way. If there are rules out there, follow the rules. And that's how they gauge themselves and others. Did you get it done with meticulous attention to detail? You can spot a C in their home environment with a male, because when they pull open their drawer for their underwear, all their socks are in a row. All their underwear is folded, neatly and aligned. You can spot a C in the parking lot. They'll pull into a diagonal parking spot,
5 times.
pull into it, pull back out, pull in 5 times, get out, walk around the car, make sure it's exactly where it should be, then they'll go in the store. Okay? Meticulous attention to detail, what we call compliant. They judge themselves and protect themselves by making sure they do things the correct way. If I've done it the way it says it's supposed to be done, you cannot criticize me. Okay? So again, we're all mixtures of this. Big fears. Fear, you know, is a real powerful negative motivator. If you take a look at your life and maybe the foolish and unfortunate things you've ever done, usually it's because you acted out of fear. When you become fearful, emotions take over. And when we let our emotions rule our behavior, that's when we get ourselves into trouble. None of you really want to acknowledge that, but there's a couple of people going, yeah. What's the big fear of a driver? Loss of control. Or being taken advantage of. The D gets their joy in life from having control and making things work and getting it done. Frequently, sometimes a D, bored, everything's going pretty smooth, will figure out a way to screw things up just so they can go back and take control. If you had a husband who was a D personality, how do you get him to cut the grass?
Go out there and start cutting.
Either go out and start cutting yourself or tell him, you know, we need to leave in about 45 minutes. I don't think you're going to be able to get the grass cut by then. They're just waiting for a challenge. Okay? I, big fear, criticism. Criticism in public. Being laughed at, joked at, social rejection, if you like, okay? We'll find that for some folks, when you look at graph number 2, your private graph, I think, is it?
Internal.
Internal. That's the graph that tends to reflect your behavior under pressure. And some people, when they get under pressure, they get very verbal, explaining what they're doing, defending themselves, ready to talk, and you'll find a high I score in your second graph, typically, if that's true. They're very verbal people. Yes, big fear would be loss of security. Now, security means different things to different people. Financial security, job security, emotional security. Again, they're looking to keep things under control. C, big fear, criticism of their work. Not public criticism of their personality, but criticism of the quality of their work. So you're going to have elements of each of these. We're going to try to figure out which one's more dominant and what that means in terms of the way you see the world, the way you listen and hear to other people, the way you deliver yourself, and the way you make decisions. Because we are literally speaking 4 different languages here. And we go through life absent any of this training thinking that everybody else thinks like we do, or pretty close, or at least ought to. So, what percent of the general personality out there do you suppose are S's? Go along, get along, quiet, don't show a lot of emotion.
Low.
No, actually it's pretty high. This is the big one. About 69% of the general population types out as an S dominant.
This is just America?
Yeah. Yeah, there are cultural influences to be even higher, probably in Japan.
We don't want to buck the status quo.
Trying to remember my numbers here. Remember what the other one? 17 or 11, I forgot which one. I think the I is about 11%. About one people. You can spot the I personality in kids growing up. That's the class clown, the person talking, getting all the attention. They just like you know, to be the focus of what's going on. C's, about 17%. C's make good accountants, good lawyers, attention to detail. What's that leave for the D's?
13.
Me?
Let me see here, 69 and 11 is 80, and 17 is 97.
3%.
So about 3% types out here as a strong D personality. All the stories. Is there an advantage to any one particular style?
Depends on which one it is.
Absolutely, there's an advantage to every style. What's the advantage to being a D?
D's got to be the best.
They get it done. Everybody else sits around and talks about it or thinks about it, but doesn't do anything about it. D's get it done. I have a very close personal friend who's one of the strongest D's I know. This guy has done, by the time, he was a student here many years ago, by the time he was 25 years old, he was a pilot, he was an underwater demolitions guy. He can build a house from the ground up in any aspect of it. He can pull the motor out of a car or tear down an outboard motor completely and put it back together. He can do anything. But he's also rather curt and abrupt in the way he communicates. One evening he and I were out having a beer at a local establishment, and a young lady came in. This is many years ago. And that didn't sound right, did it? She was a student at the time. And, hey, how you doing? And she said, may I sit with you fellows for just a minute? I'm waiting on my friend to come in. I said, sure. And so she sat down, and at that time, the reason I said it was a long time ago, you could smoke in restaurants back then. And she said, would it trouble you if I smoked a cigarette? Yeah, go ahead. And so she lights up her cigarette, and we're talking, and Chris looks up at her a minute later, and he says, you'd look a lot better if you didn't smoke. He did not mean that as a personal criticism. He was simply observing facts that he thought she would like to know that. That's it, right?
So are D's Aspergian or something?
No, well, sometimes. Yeah. Jim, you got any stories? You told me about some D's, come on.
No, actually, I hadn't thought of that, but there might be some
Relationship there?
Asperger's in the D. Yeah, I can't think of any particular. Let's see, let me think of something. Well, I'll do me. What was it, the last meeting, I said that on a number of these things, they told me that I would be a good pastor or a funeral director. So, just knowing what you know about what you've learned there, what would you say?
DISC, what's Jimmy's dominant side, do you think? Aye?
S.
Yes. Kind of quiet as the S funeral director?
Yeah.
Kind of hallelujah up on the pulpit?
Yeah, IS, very high IS.
He is an
Yeah,
advisor.
advisor.
I don't remember the term for each one, but he's a high IS.
Yeah. So, it works.
It's good to be optimistic if you're gonna run a funeral home.
I wouldn't do that, but
What do you think I am?
D.
C?
D.
D?
DI.
DI? Anybody else? C?
No, I think DS maybe.
I don't think there's anything about you that's S.
What'd you say? What'd you say, Ben?
I said, I don't think anything about you is S.
You know?
No, I think you're pretty amiable.
This is my graph.
They made a chart just for him. Really?
That's what I yes, yeah.
Yeah. Really?
That's
No?
who I am.
And
Wow.
that's interesting.
And I'm trying to make a point here. When you have three above, you rank them from highest to lowest. I'm an SCI these days. I used to be an IS when I first started teaching. Over time, I've changed. When you have these three, S, C, and I, above the halfway line, but the D down low, that's a not uncommon mixture. And what it means is you're generally pretty comfortable playing whatever game up here you need to until things get out of control. And when things get out of control, this tends to rise up to here until things get under control, and then it reverts back down. And part of that is the military.
yeah, we used to call it, all three of mine are above the line,
Yeah.
although the C is not very much. But we used to call it wearing the mask. And with my background, I've learned how to kind of fit into whatever, situation there may be. As I said, it's really not that uncommon. And there are a lot of us who wear the mask, so to speak, consciously or unconsciously.
My comment to you in terms of management, where do you need to be? Where do you need to be up here as a manager? You
Right
need
in
to
the
be
middle.
right in here and able to flex, or what I call a chameleon. Now, some people get offended by that term. They mean, oh, you've got to be a hypocrite and pretend to be something you're not.
No.
That's not what I'm
Be
saying.
empathic.
Flexible.
Empathic is an excellent word. You've got to be able to slide into that role and feel comfortable and communicate, which means listen more than talk. And when you can do that, you can elicit more input from the people you work with. They begin to trust you more. Trust is the most important ingredient in any relationship, and certainly in management. And if you can't communicate in the style of the people you're working with, don't expect them to respect you or trust you. So the takeaway from all of this is, what is your style? And can you learn to move towards the center when you need to, depending on the situation and the people you're talking with? That's the bottom line. All right, your comments or your questions? Can you remember your worst boss right now? Do you think you know what perhaps personality type that was? What two types up here do you suppose don't get along very well? typically crossways, okay? Some people, a CI or IC type is common. And these are people who, if they're well adjusted, they move comfortably back and forth depending on the circumstances. Gary Bradson down at the city.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
a CI.
Yeah.
Good guy.
Perfect.
You don't find a lot of people that have the D and the S at the same time.
Uh-oh.
Well, it's not a bad thing.
Okay.
It may well mean that you're very comfortable being somewhat chameleon-like, adjusting as you need to. Where you get your greatest breakdown, though, imagine the S personality is looking more than anything for reassurance that everything's okay. And so, if I'm an S personality and I come into Jimmy who's a D, what I want to hear from Jimmy is, hey, come on in, sit down, relax, let's talk a little bit, tell me what's going on. I'm hoping that if I've got a problem, he's going to say, you know, you're a really good employee, you've been doing a lot of good things, there's a little something I want to talk to you about. And if he'll do that, I'm going to be fine. But if he's a D, what's he probably going to say?
We got a problem.
Come here, sit down. Look, this and this and this, don't let it happen again. You got any questions? Good, bye. What's going to happen to me?
You're gonna leave
I'm gonna
sobbing.
feel
I'm going to be
insecure.
sobbing. I'm going to need some Kleenex tissue, no doubt about it. I mean, why does he
You'll
hate
find
me?
an eye.
Why does he hate me so much?
He told you. You should heal it for sure.
And what's Jimmy probably thinking?
What's?
That was a good conversation. I bet he took that one right. He'll get it done.
Right.
And he'll wonder what's wrong with me. I'm outside the door crying my eyes out. On the other hand, if Jimmy comes in to see me and he's a D, and I'm an S, what am I prone to do? I've got to criticize him about something he did or didn't do. What am I probably going to do?
You're gonna reassure him first.
Oh, I'm going to reassure him. I'm going to chat about this. Did you go
He's
fishing
gonna get
last weekend?
frustrated.
We're going to circle around very gently, and I'm going to say, you're just such a great guy. You do so many things. There's just this one little thing I want to talk to you about. Well, by the time I get around to saying there's this one little thing, he's wondering, what the hell am I here for? Yana. So immediately he figures, I don't have any guts, right? I got no courage to stand and say what's going on. I probably don't even know what's going on. So I've lost that too. So can you adjust your style? Can you identify I's and D's and S's and C's? One of the things about an S, they don't show a lot of emotion. That doesn't mean they don't feel it. But if you make an S angry, they will just kind of, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
You sure you're okay? Yeah, I'm fine. No problem. You look a little upset. No, I'm not upset. They get real quiet. You know what that means?
You're in
You
trouble.
wake up with a horse head in your bed tomorrow?
I'm not that extreme, but I do know where you park every day, and I'm not in a hurry. It may take 5 years, but I will never forget what you just did. They carry a grudge, so be careful. I mean, some of you in here, if things don't go well between us, I'll be in changing your grade next term. Okay? Other comments, questions? Your challenge, yes, sir.
Is there a significance to being on one side or the other side? I mean, I know there's a significance, clearly, you got process and product, but I guess I'm not really asking a question that matters. Yeah, never mind.
Okay, let me show you 3 others real quick.
I have a question for him.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I get it.
For like the CIs, I know you said it was pretty common for this
Yeah.
CI personality combo. Is it common for them basically to be, for the D and the S to pretty much be on the line
No,
in those cases?
no, that's kind of where I'm going here right now. There are 3 patterns that we don't see very often, right? I want to make you aware of. One of them is when all 4 of the plots are well above the halfway line. And this is a person who's trying to be super person, trying to do everything and be everything for everybody. This is generally indicative of a person who's really burning that fuse really short, really stressed. Okay? Don't see it often, once in a while. This one's a lot more common. You find all 4 points reasonably close to the midway line. And this is called a transition pattern. And that's usually indicative of somebody who is in a new environment, new situation. You just changed jobs, you just relocated, you're in a new relationship. Use this a lot, by the way, in couples counseling and marriage counseling, at least I do. So you find this pattern, you usually want to talk to somebody and say, look, I don't know what's going on in your life, probably things have changed, but why don't you just set this aside, don't even think about it, and in another 6 months, let's do it again. By that time, you'll have sorted out what's going on and how you're going to behave to feel comfortable. The last type is where you have 4 points down here very low. And in over 20 years of doing this, I've seen this twice. And I mean, they were right on the bottom. And in both cases, we talked to that person and found they were contemplating suicide. They were shut down. So those are unusual patterns, but they're very revealing. Okay. Have I covered all the points? You got other things?
No,
you got?
I think we're good.
Sir?
So by understanding, what type of personality you are, I guess that's how you would move forward in getting closer to the center of the grid.
Yes. If you, whatever personality you are, look at the other three and say, what would I have to do to be more like that and be comfortable by doing that? If you're a D personality, I've worked a lot of Ds on this. And it's hard for them to change because they've been successful that way. Ds, by the way, the high Ds, typically are very, very competent people. And when they tell you, oh, I think that's a wheel bearing, it probably is a damn wheel bearing. That's a verbatim, that's one of the ones Chris did to me. To get a D to become more like an S, more like a C, more like an I, is a difficult thing. And it literally takes months and years for them to work on how can I think before I say anything and say something in a way that is more engaging with that different personality style.
Like I see that one of mine is very low.
Okay.
I've been working on that. But it's interesting how my graph changes from what the external to the internal.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully, for most folks, all three graphs are relatively similar. And when they're not, frequently we want to sit down and talk about, what's going on, why.
I
What's
noticed,
Go ahead.
I noticed that it was easier to choose the least, and it took some
As opposed to most?
Most, yeah.
Okay. We do change. When I got out of the military, I had two great fears in life, or one great dislike and one great fear. I hated economics, having taken it in college, which is, I've been teaching it for 33 years now, and I was absolutely terrified of speaking in public.
Oh, here you are.
I have been asked by a 3-star general to get off the stage because I couldn't present very well. I've changed, I hope. I had a very low I score, and having done enough of it, I stand up in front of anybody now and talk. I don't even mind making a fool out of myself. So we can change, but if we consciously look at these things and think about what we're doing before we engage, think about the people you work with. How can I engage with that person more successfully, in a more positive manner?
Is it
Think-
possible that's age and experience too? That's
Absolutely.
Part of it.
Sure, sure. You should have seen me the first year I taught college. I was stressed to the max. After a little while, you either get older or tougher, I don't know. But it becomes easier. Good point. What was I gonna tell you?
The other point that I think it's been said in a lot of other different ways, but the real answer, one of the real answers is that you become more of aware of why the people around you are reacting in the way that they are, or behaving in the way that they are. It's only a piece of it, but it gives you another tool in your toolbox, so to speak, to make better decisions as a manager.
There is another matrix in the booklet. I want to explain it just for a moment. Well, we have the DI and the S and the C. The other way to view this is when these personalities look at the environment, there is a tendency to think that it's a hostile environment outside or that it is a friendly environment. And so S's and I's tend to go into relationships and situations expecting folks to be, if not friendly, at least neutral. C's and D's expect to go in and interface with other people and find that they are, if not hostile, maybe in disagreement, or that they're going to confront and challenge you. On this axis, The D and the I tend to sense that they can control their environment. The D can control it because he can do things, he can make things happen. The I can control it through power of personality. I can get control of the situation just because people are gonna like me, they're gonna listen to me, they're gonna know I know what I'm talking about. These folks tend to view the world as not controllable, and they adjust accordingly. The C follows the rules, therefore while you can't control it, you can make damn sure you're safe by doing the right thing. And the S wants to manage that environment by keeping things in harmony. So another way to look at what's going through their minds. And again, you have got to become reasonably accomplished at playing every role. One last, this is a stretch, but I've seen this one. This is called the warrior, who is willing to fight and confront. This is called the priest, who has inspiring things to say. This is called the scholar, who has the facts. And this is called the poet, who likes to synthesize in a relaxed manner. And if you can accomplish all of these skills, become adept in all of them, then you become here the philosopher. Not one who can spell. So if that helps too, another way to look at it. Where are you? Where do you need to be? How do you make decisions? Make them in a hurry? Make them very slowly. If your boss is a C, and you need a decision on your budget for next year, and you need it by next Wednesday, what are the chances you're going to get it? Between 0 and none. Because they're going to ask for more detail. If you're going to go in and talk to your boss who's a C, what are you going to bring with you?
Facts.
All the printed facts that justify what you're talking about. If you bring that into a D, what happens?
Oh, tell me.
Put that outside, we'll get to it later. Sure you will. Okay? If you want to talk to your boss who's a strong S, what do you need to do?
Tell a story.
Build the interpersonal relationship in your time.
Shorts and grass, maybe?
Not even that initially. You will need it later, but initially, build the trust. Once you've got the trust, then come in and back it up, because they want that reassurance that those facts can give them. I'd like to see. Okay? Now you have an assignment later in the term, that you've got to make 6 observations of people that you meet with, mix with, using the DISC profile. What were they? How did you interact, or how could you have better influence the situation? So be thinking about this, please. I want to use this as a basis of discussion the rest of the term on a lot of things.
Other people random or other people in here?
Not in here, outside in the real world. We're all artificial.
You have to go in the real world.
Okay, drive careful.